Hello! This is my first attempt at a video of how I make my webcomic. I've been making Heir to the Bones and publishing it online for a little over a year now, once every week, and I've been looking for an excuse to show everyone exactly how I do it and what my process is like, because I feel like it's a little different than most. So this was about 2.5 hours of footage that I have condensed into a little under 10 minutes for you, just to make it a little bit easier, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with y'all. Also, I made my intro too long, so we have to sit here for a second. If you do hear weird sounds, it's my air conditioner. It's hot as butts today. So yeah, let's get going. So the first thing I do, I actually have a script pre-written for several chapters of what all is happening in a general sense, but I will edit dialogue based on where characters are on the page and what their emotions are. Edits happen all the time, so what you see in the document isn't necessarily what you get. I then take the panels and the sketching and kind of do it all at once. So as I'm drawing those panels, which went by pretty quick in this video, I'm already thinking about what kind of sketches I want, where I want the characters to be placed, what kind of scene composition I'm looking for. Like that thing with the stairs, I actually had in my head before this page even came together. And I wanted it to be like a big, broad expository panel, a whole bunch of little monologue, well, what's it called? Whatever. A whole bunch of little exposition panels and then dialogue down at the bottom, which is pretty unusual for me because the comic is pretty dialogue heavy in the first place. So the sketching is actually, I go directly from the sketch to the line art, which I think is pretty unusual. A lot of people will do more of a storyboard type thing, but this is my storyboard. It's sort of the halfway point between just the stick figure storyboard and a full-on sketch, and this is what I work from when I do my line art, which it's really brain intensive, but it doesn't take as much time as adding a whole nother step to that process would. So we're coming up on the end of the sketching here. I do move the characters around just a little bit, but generally speaking, once I have the idea, I'm going with it. And we're already to the line art. Line art is by far the most tedious and labor-intensive of this whole thing. The sketching uses my brain, but this uses my hand. However, I can kind of turn my brain off for this one a little bit, depending on how in-depth I make my sketches. You'll see me kind of going outside of the lines of the sketch because they're so loose and haphazard that sometimes, see that skeleton over there that I'm about to be working on? It's got very little detail in the ribcage, and I kind of have to make that up as I go along, so I, as they say, played myself, and I spent a long time on it. But yeah, the line art is heckin' time consuming, but I use the same size brush for everything for the most part, so it's not hard per se. So this is the part where I'll put on music or YouTube videos or something. So when I'm doing the sketches, I'm thinking about it so hard, I'm thinking about the composition that I can't even listen to music in the background. But once I get to the line art, I can relax a little bit and start watching YouTube or whatever. This part was uniquely challenging because I'd never done a silhouette proper, and that's kind of the effect that I wanted here. But it was really hard not to draw all the inside lines and give myself more work than I intended. But yeah, this is the tedious part. Generally, once I've drawn a character, I don't make huge edits to where they're at. Where they're at and what their emotions are is all kind of conveyed right there in that first sketch. And you'll see me making small changes, Myra's hand position there. Or oh, I'm gonna make Corky holding the knife now instead of just standing there. But as far as composition, I don't really change anything once the sketch is made. I think that's the problem with making it a serial kind of deal. I want to put out something every week, and once in a while that's going to mean it's not perfect, it's not exactly the way I want to, but it's a fun exercise in being okay with things not being perfect, So now we're on our second layer of lines, which I use, I believe it's called the snap tool in Metabang Paint, to make perfectly straight lines, or work from a perspective. It's really, really cool. I don't know what I would do without it at this point. And now you see me adding some texture to the background. Backgrounds were actually a big weakness of mine when I started doing webcomics, in that they're boring and I don't want to do them. But I found that adding even a few lines here and there can really like enhance the atmosphere. And now I'm working on the eyes really quick and the speech bubbles, which are their own couple of layers and generally come together pretty fast. And now we're on to the colors. So colors arguably takes longer than any other portion. And there will be a lot of flashing and going back and forth, so if that's something that you're sensitive to, I would skip ahead right now. I'll put some time cards in the description. Coloring requires zero brain, because I have already designed these characters and what they're supposed to wear. Ages ago I did that legwork, and now all I have to do is fill bucket tool my way to success. So you'll see me going back and forth between one picture and another, copy-pasting colors for the most part, that's all it is. I even do this with background stuff. So the door handle in the first panel, for example, you'll see me opening a really old comic to get an example of a door handle, because it's a brand new crypt, it's a brand new place, I'm gonna have to choose some new colors. But for little things that all are supposed to look the same, I don't want to have to go back and remember like, oh, which shade of gray is this door handle versus the previous one. Just make them all the same. Take those shortcuts. You're worth it. That's the nice thing about comics. If you can take a shortcut, you should. It will help you immeasurably, and as long as you're not like infringing on any intellectual property, you are good to go. We're still working on color. Okay, now you see me warming up the color on that one where she's casting the spell in the doorway. I think having the entire thing blue is looking a little bit visually boring, so I wanted to spice it up just a little bit. Not too much, so it's clearly the same building. Now we're getting into shading. So you see that little M up there, just flashed by. I have a layer that I call M for multiply, which is the type of layer that I use for shading. And I just keep those same colors forever. I copy paste it from one page to the next, so I don't have to think too hard about what color I'm going to use. And there's a whole spectrum in there. There's kind of an orangey gray for inside, there's a blue shading for outside, there's one for nighttime that's a little bit darker. And as I go from page to page, I just keep using those colors over and over. So this is actually the same shading color as I used in the tavern scenes, which I thought would provide a nice contrast because it's kind of orange to show that they're indoors, but then the background's blue, and I just think it's neat. Shading I also don't have to think too super hard about. As long as I know where the light source is coming from, once you get enough practice in, it really just comes together. Like, this isn't an art tutorial by any means, this is just me talking about how I personally do comics. There's a lot of ways to do it, and I wouldn't even say there's any right or wrong. I think I probably put more effort into the shading portion than like typical serialized comics do, because I really like the effect. I think it adds something that flat coloring just doesn't have. Especially if you want like very dramatic scenes or like underneath lighting, like lighting coming out of the chest there. Ooh, the effects, that's my favorite part. So I like to add a little bit of dark to the outsides to show it's a little bit claustrophobic, they're indoors, and then I'm adding a overlay layer to those candles to really make them pop and show that it's bright but not too bright, and then I'm kind of gunking it up with some of my bespoke brush. Wow, that was quick, and we have it. That's my comic. That's the whole process. I'm pretty happy with this one. It was very art intensive. If you want to read the comic itself, I will put a link in the description. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out, and subscribe or whatever, and see you in the next one. Okay, bye-bye! But I'm looking forward to it, and now I have to fill all this space, and this is a terrible take. What am I doing?